Kim Jong-un's aunt tried to escape North Korea and live a normal life. She failed, and what happened to her family is absolutely horrifying. Kim Kyong-hui, that's a name you probably haven't heard before, but you should know it, because this woman was once one of the most powerful people in North Korea. She was the daughter of North Korea's founder, the sister of its second leader, and the aunt of its current dictator, Kim Jong-un. She had everything: power, influence, access to luxuries that ordinary North Koreans could never dream of. But she also had something else. She had a front-row seat to one of the most brutal regimes in human history. And what she witnessed, what she experienced, what she lost, would break most people. This is the story of what it's really like to be part of the Kim family. And trust me, it's not what you think. Because when you're related to a dictator, you're not safe, you're not protected, you're a potential threat, and threats get eliminated. Let's start with who Kim Kyong-hui actually is, because to understand her story, you need to understand the Kim family and how power works in North Korea. North Korea isn't just a dictatorship, it's a family dictatorship, a dynasty. The Kim family has ruled North Korea for 3 generations. Kim Il-sung founded the country in 1948. When he died in 1994, his son Kim Jong-il took over. And when Kim Jong-il died in 2011, his son Kim Jong-un became the leader. It's like royalty, except instead of fancy ceremonies and waving to crowds, it's based on fear, violence, and total control. Kim Kyong-hui was born in 1946. She's the daughter of Kim Il-sung, the founder of North Korea. That makes her royalty in North Korean terms. She grew up in the most privileged household in the entire country. While ordinary North Koreans were starving, she had everything: food, education, luxury. But being born into the Kim family isn't a blessing, it's a curse. Because in a dictatorship, family members aren't just relatives, they're potential rivals. They're people who might want power for themselves, and that makes them dangerous. Kim Kyong-hui married a man named Jong Song-taek. He was ambitious, he was smart, and he rose through the ranks of the North Korean government to become one of the most powerful men in the country. Together, Kim Kyong-hui and Jong Song-taek were a power couple. They had influence, they had connections. When Kim Jong-il was alive, they were part of his inner circle. They helped run the country. And when Kim Jong-il died and Kim Jong Un took over, they were supposed to help the young leader transition into power. Kim Jong-un was only in his late 20s when he became the leader of North Korea. He was inexperienced. He needed guidance. He needed support from experienced people like his aunt and her husband. But here's the problem. Jong Song-taek was too powerful. He had too much influence, and Kim Jong-un saw him as a threat. In a normal family, you'd talk about it, you'd work it out. But this isn't a normal family. This is North Korea. And in North Korea, threats get eliminated. December 2013. That's when everything fell apart for Kim Kyong-hui. Her husband, Jong Song-taek, was arrested. Not quietly, not discreetly. It was public. It was humiliating. He was dragged out of a government meeting by armed guards while everyone watched. The charges against him were insane. They accused him of plotting to overthrow Kim Jong-un. They said he was corrupt, that he was a traitor, that he was living a decadent lifestyle with drugs and women. Were any of these charges true? Probably not, or at least not in the way they were presented. In North Korea, charges like this are just excuses. The real reason is always the same. Someone became too powerful. Someone was seen as a threat, and they needed to be removed. Jong Song-taek was put on trial. And I use the word trial loosely, because this wasn't a real trial. There was no defense, no lawyers, no chance to prove his innocence. It was a show, a performance. The outcome was already decided. He was found guilty, and then he was executed. But not just executed, he was brutally executed. The details of how he died are disputed. Some reports say he was shot. Others say he was fed to dogs. The North Korean government denied the dog story, but honestly, with North Korea, you never know what's true and what's propaganda. What we do know is that Jong Un was killed. And it wasn't just him. His entire family was purged. His brothers, his nephews, anyone connected to him. They were all arrested. Some were executed. Others were sent to prison camps, which is basically a slow death sentence. This is how North Korea works. When someone falls from grace, they don't just punish that person. They punish everyone related to them. It's called guilt by association. Your father committed a crime? You're guilty too. Your uncle was a traitor? You're going to prison. It's a system designed to create terror. Because if you know that your actions could get your entire family killed, you're going to be very careful about what you do. So imagine you're Kim Kyong-hui. Your husband has just been arrested, put on trial, and executed. Your family has been purged. People you loved are dead or in prison camps. What do? You can't fight back. You can't protest. You can't even speak out, because if you do, you'll be next. Kim Kyong-hui went silent. She disappeared from public view. For months, nobody knew where she was. People speculated. Was she dead? Was she in prison? Had she been executed too? Some reports said she had a mental breakdown, that she was hospitalized, that the trauma of losing her husband and seeing her family destroyed had broken her psychologically. Other reports said she was under house arrest, that Kim Jong Un had spared her life but was keeping her locked away where she couldn't cause problems. And still other reports said she was sick, that she had health problems, that she was dying. The truth? We still don't really know. Because information about Kim Kyong-hui is tightly controlled. The North Korean government doesn't talk about her, and the few people who might know the truth can't speak freely. What we do know is that she survived. Unlike her husband, unlike the rest of his family, she survived. But at what cost? Can you imagine living with that? Knowing that your nephew, someone you helped raise, someone you supported, ordered the execution of your husband? Knowing that you're only alive because he decided to let you live? That's not really survival. That's torture. To understand Kim Kyong-hui's situation, you need to understand what it's like to be part of the Kim family. Because from the outside, it looks great. You're rich, you're powerful, you have access to anything you want. But the reality is very different. First, you're constantly being watched. The Kim family doesn't trust anyone, not even each other. So there are always people monitoring you, listening to your conversations, reporting on your activities, looking for any sign of disloyalty. Second, you can't leave. You're trapped in North Korea. You can't just decide to move to another country. You can't travel freely. You're a prisoner, even if your prison is a luxury mansion. Third, you're always in danger. Because in a dictatorship, power dynamics shift constantly. Someone who's in favor today could be executed tomorrow. There's no job security, no safety net. You're only as safe as the dictator's mood. And fourth, you're complicit. Even if you don't personally order executions or run prison camps, you're part of the system. You benefit from it, and that means you're responsible for it, at least in part. Kim Kyong-hui lived this life for decades. She saw her father rule with an iron fist. She saw her brother continue that rule. And then she saw her nephew take over and prove that he was just as brutal as his predecessors. She attended lavish parties while ordinary North Koreans starved. She lived in luxury while millions of people lived in poverty. She enjoyed freedoms that ordinary citizens could never dream of. But she also lived in constant fear because she knew how the system worked. She knew what happened to people who fell out of favor. And she knew that no matter how powerful she was never truly safe. Let's talk about those prison camps for a minute. Because when I mentioned earlier that Jang Song-taek's family members were sent to prison camps, you might not fully understand what that means. North Korea has a system of political prison camps called kwanliso. These aren't like prisons in other countries. These are places where people are sent to die. slowly, painfully. The conditions in these camps are horrific. Prisoners are starved. They're forced to do hard labor for 12 to 15 hours a day. They're beaten, tortured, executed for the smallest infractions. And it's not just criminals who end up in these camps. It's political prisoners, people who said the wrong thing, people who tried to escape, people who are related to someone who fell out of favor. There are entire families in these camps, children who were born there, who have never known anything else, who will probably die there. The North Korean government denies that these camps exist, but satellite images show them clearly. And defectors who've escaped North Korea have told stories about what goes on inside. Stories of people being worked to death, of public executions, of women being raped by guards, of children dying from malnutrition, of people eating rats and insects just to survive. When Kim Kyong-hei's husband's family members were sent to these camps, this is where they went. This is what they experienced. And Kim Kyong-hei knew about these camps. She had to. She was part of the government. She had access to information that ordinary North Koreans didn't have. So she knew what was happening to her husband's relatives. She knew they were suffering, and there was nothing she could do about it. There's something deeply twisted about how dictatorships affect families. Because in a normal society, your family is your safe space. They're the people you trust, the people who have your back. But in a dictatorship, especially one run by a family dynasty, your relatives become potential threats. You can't trust them. They can't trust you. Everyone's watching everyone else, looking for signs of disloyalty. This is especially true in the Kim family. Kim Jong-un's own uncle was executed. His half-brother, Kim Jong-nam, was assassinated in Malaysia in 2017, killed with a nerve agent in an airport. Why? Because he was seen as a potential rival. When you're willing to kill your own uncle and your own brother, it sends a message. Nobody is safe, not even family. And this creates a really messed up psychological environment. Because you're supposed to love your family, you're supposed to trust them, but you also know that they might betray you, or that you might have to betray them to survive. Kim Kyong-hei lived in this environment her entire life. She grew up knowing that power was everything, that loyalty was conditional, that love was secondary to politics. Her father, Kim Il-sung, purged rivals constantly. Her brother, Kim Jong-il, continued that tradition, and her nephew, Kim Jong Un, proved that he learned the lesson well. So when Jang Song-taek was executed, Kim Kyong-hei wasn't surprised. She couldn't be. She'd seen this play out dozens of times before. She knew how the game worked. But knowing doesn't make it easier. Expecting something doesn't make it less painful when it happens. Kim Kyong-hei and Jang Song-taek had a daughter, Kim Sul-sung, born in 1974. Not much is known about her. The North Korean government keeps information about Kim family members tightly controlled. But we know she existed. We know she was the granddaughter of Kim Il-sung, the niece of Kim Jong-il, the cousin of Kim Jong-un. And we know that she died, young, in her 20s. The official story is that she died in a car accident in Paris in 2006. She was studying there, living the life of a privileged elite while ordinary North Koreans couldn't even dream of leaving the country. But there are rumors. There are always rumors with North Korea. Some people say it wasn't an accident. Some people say she was depressed, that she might have taken her own life. Others say she was killed for political reasons. We don't know the truth. We probably never will. But imagine being Kim Kyong-hei and losing your daughter, your only child, and then, just a few years later, watching your husband be arrested and executed, watching your extended family be purged. The psychological toll of that is unimaginable. How do you keep going? How do you wake up every day knowing that everything you loved has been taken from you? And yet, Kim Kyong-hei did keep going, because what choice did she have? In North Korea, you don't get to check out. You don't get to quit. You keep going because the alternative is death. Let's be clear about something. Kim Kyong-hui was not a victim in the traditional sense. She was part of the regime. She benefited from it. She had power and wealth that came from the suffering of millions of ordinary North Koreans. While people were starving during the famine of the 1990s, she was living in luxury. While families were being torn apart and sent to prison camps, she was attending state functions and enjoying the privileges of being a Kim. She knew what was happening. She had to. And she did nothing to stop it. Maybe she couldn't have stopped it. Maybe speaking out would have just gotten her killed. But she still participated in the system. So when we talk about her suffering, we have to acknowledge that context. She's not an innocent bystander. She's someone who benefited from a brutal system and then got hurt by that same system when it turned on her. This is the price of power in a dictatorship. You can enjoy the benefits for a while, but eventually the system consumes everyone, even the people at the top, even family members of the dictator. Kim Kyong-hui lived a life of privilege. She had things that most people could never imagine. But she paid for those privileges with her husband's life, with her extended family's lives, with her own mental health and well-being. Was it worth it? Only she can answer that question. But I doubt she'd say yes. After Jong Song-taek's execution, Kim Kyong-hui disappeared for years. People thought she might be dead, or imprisoned, or exiled to some remote part of North Korea. But then she started appearing again, slowly, carefully, at state functions, standing next to Kim Jong Un at important events. In 2020, she was seen at a military parade. In 2021, at another state event. Each time, she looked older, frailer, but she was alive. Why did Kim Jong Un let her reappear? There are a few theories. One theory is that he needed her for legitimacy. Kim Kyong-hui is the last surviving child of Kim Il-sung. She's a direct link to the founder of North Korea. Having her by his side gives Kim Jong-un credibility. It shows continuity. It connects him to his grandfather's legacy. Another theory is that he felt guilty. Maybe, possibly. He executed her husband and destroyed her family. Maybe letting her live and appear in public is his way of making amends, or at least his way of showing that he's not completely heartless. A third theory is that she's being controlled, that she has no choice but to appear, that Kim Jong-un is using her as a puppet to strengthen his own position. We don't know which theory is correct. Maybe all of them are true to some extent. What we do know is that Kim Kyong-hui is still alive, still appearing at state functions, still playing her role in the Kim family drama. But what's going on in her head? What does she think about when she stands next to Kim Jong-un, smiling for the cameras? Does she hate him? Does she fear him? Does she just feel numb? We'll probably never know. Kim Kyong-hui's story isn't unique in the Kim family. Other relatives have suffered similar fates, some worse. Kim Jong-un's uncle on his mother's side, along with several other relatives, have disappeared or been executed. Anyone who was seen as a potential threat has been eliminated. Kim Jong-nam, Kim Jong-un's half-brother, was living in exile in Macau. He wasn't involved in North Korean politics. He wasn't trying to take power. He just wanted to live his life. He liked going to Disneyland. He liked gambling. He wasn't a threat. But Kim Jong-un saw him as a potential rival, someone that foreign governments might try to install as a replacement leader. So, in 2017, two women approached Kim Jong-nam in Kuala Lumpur International Airport and smeared VX nerve agent on his face. He died within minutes. The women claimed they thought they were part of a prank show. They didn't know they were committing murder. But someone knew. Someone planned it. And all evidence points to North Korea. This is what happens in the Kim family. You don't even have to be actively seeking power. You just have to exist. And if the dictator sees you as a threat, you're eliminated. Kim Kyong-hui has watched this happen over and over again. She's seen family members disappear. She's seen them executed. She's seen the family tree get pruned, violently and brutally, until only the most loyal or the most powerless remain. And she's one of the survivors. Not because she's strong, Not because she's smart, but because Kim Jong-un decided to let her live. Kim Kyong-hui has serious health problems. This has been reported by multiple sources over the years. She struggled with alcoholism. This isn't surprising, given what she's been through. Alcohol is one of the few ways to numb the pain when you're trapped in a situation you can't escape. She's also had various physical health problems, heart issues, other ailments that come with age and stress. Some reports say she's had multiple surgeries, that she's been in and out of hospitals, that her health is fragile. Again, this isn't surprising. The stress of living in the Kim family, of losing your husband and daughter, of being constantly in fear for your life would take a toll on anyone's health. There were periods where people thought she might die soon, where reports said she was critically ill. But she's still here, still appearing at events, still playing her role. Whether she wants to keep living, or whether she's being kept alive for political purposes, we don't know. Kim Kyong-hui knows things, secrets, details about how North Korea really works, information that could be incredibly valuable to the outside world. She knows about the inner workings of the regime. She knows about the decision-making processes. She knows about the prison camps, the executions, the purges. She knows about North Korea's weapons programs, about their relationships with other countries, about their finances and how they evade sanctions. If she were to defect, if she were to leave North Korea and tell her story, it would be huge. It would be the biggest North Korean defection ever. The intelligence value alone would be enormous. But she can't defect, or won't, or hasn't. Maybe she's too closely watched. Maybe she's too old and sick to attempt an escape. Maybe she's given up hope of ever leaving. Or maybe, despite everything, she still feels loyalty to the family, to North Korea, to the system that destroyed her life. This is one of the tragic things about dictatorship. It gets into your head. It shapes how you think. Even people who suffer under it, even people who lose everything to it, sometimes can't imagine life outside of it. Kim Kyong-hui has lived her entire life in the Kim family bubble. She's never known true freedom. She's never lived in a normal society. For her, the Kim regime isn't just a political system, it's her entire world. So maybe she doesn't see herself as a victim. Maybe she sees herself as a loyal member of a family that occasionally has to make hard decisions. Maybe she's rationalized everything that's happened to her. Or maybe she's just too broken to care anymore. People sometimes compare the Kim family to royalty, and there are similarities. It's a hereditary system. Power passes from father to son. There's a cult of personality around the leader. But the Kim family is worse than traditional royalty, because at least with most royal families, there are some limits. There are traditions. There are expectations of behavior. The Kim family has no limits. They can do whatever they want, execute whoever they want, torture whoever they want, and nobody can stop them. In traditional monarchies, even absolute ones, there's usually some aristocracy, other powerful families who have influence, who can push back at least a little. In North Korea, there's only the Kim family. Everyone else is expendable. Everyone else exists to serve them. And even within the Kim family, there's only one person who really matters, the supreme leader. Everyone else, including close relatives, is just a supporting character, and supporting characters can be written out of the story at any time. Kim Kyong-hui learned this the hard way. She thought being the daughter of the founder and the sister of the leader meant something. She thought it would protect her family. She was wrong. Here's the uncomfortable question that we have to ask. Is Kim Kyong-hui a victim, or is she a perpetrator? The answer is probably both. She's a victim of a brutal system that destroyed her family and ruined her life. She's suffered immensely. She's lost people she loved. She's lived in fear and trauma. But she's also been part of that system. She's benefited from it. She's held positions of power. She's made decisions that affected people's lives. Did she ever order someone's execution? We don't know. Did she ever send someone to a prison camp? We don't know. But she was part of the government. She was in the room when decisions were made. She knew what was happening, and she didn't stop it. Maybe she couldn't, but she didn't try, as far as we know. This is the moral complexity of dictatorship. Most people in the system aren't purely evil. They're not cartoon villains. They're people who made compromises, who went along to get along, who told themselves they didn't have a choice. And maybe they didn't. Maybe speaking out would have just gotten them killed without changing anything. Maybe their options really were limited. But at some point, we have to hold people accountable for their actions or their inactions. Kim Kyong-hui could have tried to leave, could have tried to help people, could have done something to make the system less brutal. She didn't, and millions of people suffered as a result. So yes, she's a victim, but she's also complicit. And both of those things can be true at the same time. At the end of the day, Kim Kyong-hui's story is a tragedy. It's a story about how power corrupts, how dictatorships destroy families, how privilege doesn't protect you from suffering. She had everything, and she lost everything. She was powerful, and she became powerless. She was surrounded by family, and she ended up alone. And the worst part? She's still there, still trapped, still playing her role in a system that destroyed her life. There's no escape for her, no happy ending, no redemption. She's just going to keep going until she dies, standing next to her nephew at state functions, smiling for cameras, pretending everything is fine. That's what it means to be Kim Jong-un's aunt. It means living in a golden cage. It means having everything except freedom. It means surviving when everyone you love is dead. It means being a part of one of the most brutal regimes in human history and not being able to leave, not being able to speak out, not being able to do anything except watch and suffer. Kim Kyong-hui's life is a warning, a reminder that power isn't worth the price, that privilege built on suffering is hollow, that family means nothing in a dictatorship. She's alive, but she's not really living. She's survived, but at what cost? She has everything material she could want, but she's lost everything that actually matters. And there's no way out. Not for her, not at this point. She's going to die in North Korea, probably soon. She's old, she's sick, and when she dies, the world will barely notice. She'll get a state funeral, Kim Jong-un will cry crocodile tears, and life in North Korea will go on exactly as it has before. Her story will be forgotten, or rather, it will be controlled. The North Korean government will decide what people remember about her. They'll craft a narrative that serves their purposes. The truth will be buried. But we know the truth, or at least we know part of it. We know that she suffered. We know that the system she helped build turned on her. We know that being related to a dictator isn't a blessing. It's a curse. And maybe that's the real lesson here. Maybe Kim Kyong-hui's story is a warning to anyone who thinks power is worth pursuing at any cost. Because in the end, the cost is always higher than you think. She gave her life to the Kim regime, and the Kim regime took everything from her. Her husband, her daughter, her freedom, her dignity, her peace. All she has left is survival. And that's not enough. That's never enough. So the next time you see footage of Kim Jong-un at some state function, look for the elderly woman standing nearby. That's Kim Kyong-hui. That's his aunt. That's the last surviving child of Kim Il-sung. And remember that behind that carefully composed face is a lifetime of trauma, loss, and suffering. Remember that she's not there by choice. She's there because she has no other option. That's what it means to be Kim Jong-un's aunt. That's what it costs to be part of that family. And it's a price that nobody should ever have to pay. Hit subscribe if you want more stories that pull back the curtain on history's darkest moments.